makes sense that Nevada would sort of set the tone for, frankly, anything to do with what I call, I'm gonna use the term sin activities. It also makes sense that when Nevada made the decision to come online with legalized cannabis purchase and consumption about 5 years ago, that they wanted to immediately establish that they were going to become the gold standard for this industry also. And they've done so. They've done so. I'm literally quoting Governor Sisolak via the Nevada Cannabis Compliance Board when I say, Governor Sisolak does not want any underage tourist to come into the state of Nevada and purchase cannabis from a legal dispensary. And I'm proud to say that for about 5 years now, I've been working directly with the NCCB to do my very best to meet Governor Sisolak's desires. So, the fact that we are at that point with the with regulations as it relates to compliance, that's a great thing. But what's not a great thing is, unfortunately, if you operate in any state other than Nevada, that's not happening. The way that the laws are written in the rest of the states are vague, ambiguous, and they certainly don't set up a dispensary to actually execute an extremely high level of confidence as to whether an underage person is entering into the dispensary or not. And that's what we're here to talk about today, because unfortunately, whether the compliance regulations are written correctly or not, if you are found out to have an underage purchaser, someone visiting your dispensary, the $100,000 fines are real, whether you were in compliance or not. And so that is very much what we're here to talk about today. I have seen time and time again, $100,000 fines issued for underage on site, for underage purchase. And again, to reinforce, it's only the state of Nevada that actually has the language correct to help the retail dispensary owner execute proper age verification, proper ID verification. So without further ado, let's get into what goes into either accomplishing that or lack thereof.
Excuse me, do you mind if I ask a question as you're going, or do you want questions to only happen at the end of your presentation?
I think that's fine. I think that's fine, yeah.
So my question, those $100,000 fines you were speaking of, are those fines for dispensaries maybe got some bad credentials, maybe like a bad ID or like a fraudulent ID card kind of a thing, or was it that someone didn't necessarily check? I'm just trying to understand how those fines might have been interpreted to be assessed, and what was the level? Because, like, for example, in the state that we're looking at, there would be like a medical ID card. So I guess my question would be, if someone presented a fraudulent medical ID card, does that mean, and the dispensary, for example, looks at that card and relies upon that and maybe checks ID against that, if that were fraudulent, are you suggesting, is it your contention maybe that that dispensary could still receive a fine even if they did that due diligence?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a couple different aspects to unpack there. To answer your initial question, the fact is, and I think that you'll agree with me, the government doesn't necessarily how it gets its fine money. It just cares about the fact that they get their fine money. So once you get in that position, once it's found out, I've been in situations where the dispensary has literally self-reported. They were doing everything, due diligence, above and beyond what their competitors were doing, and they had the proper digital technology purchased, they had the proper digital technology downloaded, but they did not have the proper digital technology installed correctly, and therefore They thought they were doing their due diligence, someone came in, that someone that we're talking about was bragging about the fact that he had been in prior, and that's how they found out. They called us, we put our IT support team on site, figured out what the problem was. They had already reported to the state agency, and the state agency said, "Thank you for letting us know. Here's your $100,000 fine."
And that makes sense, what you're saying, but my question is a little bit more specific. Is it that you could have that type of a system where you're checking ID and it's somehow fraudulent, and because it's fraudulent and maybe looks good, that dispensary could be liable and open themselves up to that type of a fine? And I'm not trying to derail the conversation, but I think that this is kind of important for me to understand, because I want to get a very good idea as to what kind of activity is the dispensary responsible for checking.
All of it. Anytime they're responsible, just like, I mean, literally just like a bar, for example. It doesn't matter how that underage person got in. If they find out that underage person is in, it's your onus to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay. And therefore, the scenario literally does not matter. It just matters as to whether or not you were found to have someone underage on your premises, in your shop, in any age-restricted area, okay. And therefore, like, depending on your relationship, it may or may not happen, but you're absolutely, it doesn't, that's kind of what this is about, is most of the language doesn't even, it just says you need to make sure that you don't have underage people on your premises. And then there's some type of language saying how to accomplish that. But even though the language that says you need to digitally scan, it's so ambiguous, it's not specific enough to actually know how to accomplish that. And to get to your medical card question, that scenario doesn't come up very often because there's not a lot of fraudulent medical cards out there yet. There's so many recreational licenses that you've done a pretty damn good job of vetting that consumer just based on the fact that they have a medical card. I personally, and I think, you know, I'm as qualified as anyone to know, there's not a lot of fraudulent medical cards in circulation. Certainly not compared to the amount of recreational consumers that are coming in with fake, fraudulent, or what we'll call false IDs, which is, I give it to my little brother, and it's a legitimate ID, but it doesn't belong to my little brother. Okay. So.
Thank you.
Yes. So let's dig into the rather dry stuff, which is the anatomy of an ID. This is the back of the ID where the barcode exists. So at the very top, you're going to see a 1D barcode. That's for state use. It has the driver's license number. It's not used in analysis other than by the state. There's I think 5 or 6 states that has a mag stripe now. That is antiquated technology. So the only reason that those 5 or 6 states have the mag stripe still is because they're trying to, you know, transition, if you will. But the fact is, the technology exists to scan a mag stripe, but it's only used functionally, really, for like credit cards, and even that's going away, right? So the bottom one is what really matters. This 2D barcode is standardized in all of the United States and all of Canada. That's the technology that, by and large, exists. It's standardized. So if you're going to use any kind of digital scanning, that's what you're going to scan. It's the standard all through. I'm not going to say North America because Mexico can't even read their own IDs. They don't have a barcode. You still have what's called OCR technology if you want to read those. Security seal, watermarks, we're all familiar with those, probably with currency, US currency, things like that. These features, I will say these features are more robust on the front of the ID, which we'll go into more detail later. This is the information within the 2D barcode of a legitimate ID contains the mirror image of all the Latin characters, front and back. Again, there's going to be, we all know the Latin characters more familiar as they exist on the front, and the idea that that barcode within their formatting is going to have the logical things, right? The first name, last name, date of birth, address, all of that stuff exists within the barcode. And if it's a legitimate ID, then everything that exists within the barcode is obviously going to match what's on the ID in Latin characters. So what is ID validation? The idea of actually validating a driver's license. This is everything that is on the in the barcode, the parsing. Give you a second to look at that, but it's all, pretty intuitive stuff, right? As mentioned, all your Latin character information is coded within, it's called a PDF 417, by the way. The 2D barcode, technical term for it is the PDF 417. Most ID scanning software limits the analysis of the barcode to simple math, which means that there's a lot of digital scanning that is just what they call open source, and it's pretty easy, relatively, if you're technically savvy, to be able to parse a 2D barcode. It's also pretty easy to do some simple math and say, does the birth date equal more or less than 21 years? Does the expiration date, has it passed yet or not? Boom, okay, that's the information I want to report to you. This ID says it's 21 or more, and this ID says that it's not expired. The problem with that is, that's what a fake ID is, right? That's what you're trying to accomplish with a fake ID, is present it as someone who's got a license that's over 21 and it's not expired. This leads me to my main point. Not all 2D barcode scanning is created equal. There's more sophisticated ID scanning that have the algorithms built in. And that's where you start to separate the idea of being able to tell if an ID is fake or not from a digital scan. For example, if you scan a Kansas driver's license, it needs to start with 00 or 01, or if you have proper software with all the algorithms built in, then that software would tell you this was not issued by the Kansas DMV because Kansas only manufactures licenses that start with one of those two sequences. And there's, as you can imagine, throughout all 50 states, there's literally thousands of algorithms that need to be built in the software in order to properly evaluate if a 2D barcode is formatted correctly or not. Our software, for example, has 134 checks that they're looking for any given driver's license. Then there's front and back matching. I've already talked about this. So everything on the 2D barcode should match everything that's here in Latin characters. OCR technology is something that was the original way to digitally read an ID. It's literally like license plate readers would probably be the best example. You're trying to take a camera image and decide what characters are on the driver's license. The numbers, the letters. It's not perfect technology because if you if the software confuses the letter O for the letter 0, then there's going to be a problem. If there's toothpaste on the ID, then my name, Kenneth Petticord, now becomes Init Petticord, or something to that effect. So this was an early technology. What it's used for now, if properly, is to compare the front of the ID to the back of the ID. It's still, OCR still can never be perfect, but it is another security check where we can say, does it exactly match? Or if it's, again, like if the back says Kenneth Petticord and the front says Inith Petticord, then you can look at that and go, oh, that's because the letter K has been scratched. So it is a good added feature. These are the types of hardware that can digitally scan. You've got, on the far left is a desktop scanner. You probably recognize that shape if you've been to the airport recently, because that is an M500 by eSeek. It was just replaced the Gemalto 189,000 at all of our airports in America. You can also scan from a tablet, whether it's an Android, iOS, or a Windows tablet, and you can also scan from a mobile device. Okay. Are there any questions at this point? So, this is where we're going to start talking about the fact that even the best 2D barcode analysis, with all of the algorithms built in, the very best of class, can't catch all fake IDs. Because the fact is that there is good fraudulent IDs that are manufactured that have smart people, or they've got the manufacturing equipment that the state DMVs themselves use. For example, we could all go on the dark web right now, and for a couple $100 we could get 3 fake IDs that have the same manufacturing equipment that's being used in China, and they'll send you in the mail 3 very, very good fake IDs, and they will pass the 2D barcode scan with the best evaluation. What they won't do, in all likelihood, is have the holograms exactly where the holograms are supposed to be, and the watermarks where the watermarks are supposed to be, and the microprints where the microprints are supposed to be. So, for example, like, does the California bear exist in high definition in exactly where the California bear is supposed to be? Or if I expand a Michigan driver's license 30 times, can I see that it says Michigan, Michigan, Michigan written underneath the Mackinac Bridge? Because you can't see it with the naked eye, but it does exist on a Michigan driver's license. These are the types of things where we're really doing a deep dive into the driver's license. Now you're starting to talk about 95+% confidence. In order to have that analysis though, first you need to have more robust software. You need to be able to take, obviously, white light imaging front and back. You need to take ultraviolet imaging front and back, and you also need to take infrared imaging front and back. In order to evaluate, you need to have a library that can check for the holograms, high definition and placement, watermarks, microprints, things like that. So you need some special hardware in order to do that, because you have to eliminate ambient light in order to get UV and IR images. As of today, that doesn't exist with like a mobile scanner, because there's nowhere to get the white light to go away. So you need a desktop scanner. I mentioned the M500 that they're using at the airports, how it slides in. What that's doing is it's getting rid of all the white light. It's turning it into a black box so that they can take the ultraviolet images, capture those images, and then what's called authentication software can do its job. So I've already actually talked about this. This is the idea that I was mentioning, getting those images so you can find out things like the California bear being where it's supposed to be, or the microprints, Michigan, Michigan, Michigan underneath the Mackinac Bridge. These are the 3 main models, desktop scanners, that can authenticate a driver's license at this point. So to be clear, the hardware needs to get the images, the 6 images, so that the software library can do its job. And once you have authentication software, you're talking about the 2D barcode, high-level security analysis, comparing that to the front of the ID, the 2D barcode compared to the OCR, all the Latin characters on the ID, and all the holograms, and all the watermarks. These 3 devices can obtain those images so that the software can do its job. The one on the far left is called the Gemalto CR5400. The reason that one exists is because it's a lowest price point. It's a very effective model. It's not as effective as the other two because it's using mirror imaging to capture. It's like one camera shot is catching the front and using a mirror to catch the back also. So logically, right, it's not going to be as high definition. What's going to happen from that is sometimes it'll get false negatives. They'll say, the California bear is a little fuzzy. We're not sure if this was issued by California DMV or not. Well, the reason it's a little fuzzy is because it doesn't have as much higher resolution as some of the more robust devices. That being said, there's hundreds of thousands of them in the global market and in the US market. During COVID, for example, everybody wanted to be touch-free. If you wanted to go to Las Vegas Boulevard, there was a good chance that you were going to check into your hotel with a CR5400 because they were able to literally deploy thousands of those throughout the MGM properties at a relatively inexpensive cost, and therefore they weren't really trying to authenticate your ID, they were trying to accomplish hands-free ID exchange. I'm going to skip the middle one for a second and go to the far right. That is also a Gemalto product. It's called the AT10K. It's the next version of what the AT9000 was. If you paid attention, which I'm not sure why you would, but you quite possibly did, go back 1 year or 2 years, the AT9000 was what you were checking in with through security at the airport. And it's a very high quality device. The downside of the AT9000, AT10000 is the fact that it's a multiple step process because you actually have to put the government issued ID on a glass plane. And then if you're authenticating it, then you need to flip it and take those three images also. The pro of the AT9000 and the AT10000 is that it's got a glass plane that's big enough to read passports also. So if that's a value, something that's in your workflow, then you would want to consider the Gemalto high-end product because you can scan not only every 2D barcode, but you can scan passports, passport IDs. Now I'm going to go to the middle one, which is the best of class as it exists today, not including the fact that it doesn't scan passports. That's the M500. That's what's been standardized at US airports throughout the country, and the reason is because it's ultra durable and it's very high resolution. Therefore, if you have good authentication software, you will get a clear read. You will be able to tell, your negatives are going to be negative, your positives are going to be confirmed. It is best in class. It's also hands-free. You put it in there, it sort of sucks it in, brings it back out. And just to finish the thought that the ECCAM 500 is the best class, they do have a new version coming out that is also going to read passports. It's not out yet. I'm not really sure how they're going to find a way to get a passport on that, but that's going to be called the M600, and it will replace the M500 as best of class because it will also be able to evaluate passports and passport IDs. So we got scanning with no validation component versus validation, which is best of class 2D barcode analysis. It's hard to get metrics on the black market. Honestly, it depends on the community where you live in and where those IDs that are fake and fraudulent are coming from. If they're coming from some kid looking to make extra money at Northwestern University and he's doing it in his dorm room, then you're gonna be able to catch those IDs with good 2D barcode analysis. If your IDs are coming, like I mentioned, from purchase over the dark web from China using good DMV manufacturing equipment, or frankly, if it's coming from a nefarious DMV employee who's making some extra money selling legitimate DMV issued cards, then it's going to pass 3D barcode analysis. It's going to pass all analysis, actually, other than face match. And then finally, authentication, where you're going to have 95+% confidence. So state laws on ID scanning. Let's bring this back to cannabis. I mentioned before that the state of Nevada is the only one that has the language correct. Unfortunately, that means every other state doesn't have the language correct. I put this slide up just to show that there's a kaleidoscope of state regulations as it relates to marijuana, and I'm not even getting into the specifics of the ID scanning regulations. This is just, states, are they med, are they rec, is cannabis legal whatsoever? What else do we have there? Oh, whether or not ID scanning is required. And then even what we really want to do at some point is break it down even further and say, well, whether ID scanning is required or not, what exactly, how is the language? Again, going back, one of the biggest takeaways I want to make here is that you can very much be incompliant and still be letting fake IDs in on a regular basis. In fact, I can promise you it's happening at almost every dispensary in the country right now. Illinois law, for those of you who are here that are interested in Illinois regulations. It says a dispensing organization shall use an electronic reader or an electronic scanning device to scan a purchaser's government-issued ID. Well, that's pretty clear. You have to scan an ID digitally in order to be compliant at a cannabis dispensary in the state of Illinois. If applicable, to determine the purchaser's age and validity of the identification. It's a little vague to me, but I think what they're saying is if it's for rec purchase, then it's applicable. If it's for med purchase, then you might not need to validate the state ID. I don't know. I'm not from Illinois, so I'm not exactly sure what that last part is actually referring to. I would think that no matter who you have in your dispensary, it would be applicable to digitally scan their ID and do so with a high security level. So, Illinois requires a digital ID scan for cannabis purchase. There's also an added law that says your digital scan needs to decide whether it's an Illinois driver's license or somewhere other than an Illinois driver's license, because you can purchase different amounts based on whether you're an Illinois resident or an out-of-state purchaser. This is a big one. PII in Illinois is not allowed. PII, personal identifiable information, that is not allowed to be kept in the state of Illinois. And this is where, when I'm talking about, I'm not picking on Illinois, but this is where I'm talking about where we need to educate the governing bodies better, because they're saying you have to digitally scan, but they're saying you're not allowed to keep the data. The fact is, any device that is scanning, unless they have a cloud-based solution that specifically is designed or has a setting to dump that data immediately after scanning and evaluating and reporting the findings, is keeping PII locally on that device. I've seen it, I've been in town since Monday, and literally every dispensary I went to, other than Green Thumb Industries, was scanning with a handheld device, probably had a good 2D barcode library, but every time they scanned, that person's information was on that device, and will remain on that device until it's purged. Are they doing that monthly? Are they doing that weekly? Are they doing that daily? Are they doing that hourly? Pretty sure they're not doing it hourly, and I know they're not doing it instantly because there's queues and they're scanning people in, and every time they're scanning people in, that's another person that they have their PII on that device. Green Thumb Industries is the only dispensary that I went to that wasn't, because they are using a cloud-based solution and a setting that says, we're hyper compliance conscious. We wanna scan the ID, we wanna find out what the information is on it, we wanna report it, and seconds later, we want it gone. That is literally the way that the Illinois law is written. That is in compliance. That's not exactly what's happening. Yes, please.
So when the state gets the report, and the state requires that you you just flush away the personal identifiable information, does the state hold on to that information? In other words, they're getting a record, but they're saying that everybody has to purge that information. If you purge that information about you, then how do they know your usage or your consumption?
I'm not sure I understand, because I thought I heard you say the state has that information.
Well, you're letting the state know what you're selling, correct? You're reporting to the state what you're, the dispensary is reporting to the state. It's a seed and sale system, right? They're
Right.
tracking every single thing, they're even tracking the consumer because you're showing an ID. And they're saying the
Well, why do you think the state is tracking that ID?
For consumption use, they wanna know that you purchased the right amount, or this is the right amount of state, I don't know.
I can answer that.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's medical and medical only that is being reported through the, through BioTrack, right? That's not something that recreational is simply that they are from Illinois, so they determine the amount they can buy, or they're not from Illinois, to determine the amount they can buy at that time. You can go to 5 dispensaries and buy your maximum at all 5 dispensaries if you want. It's not like trying to buy a Fedrin at a pharmacy that they actually record and report that you bought something. That's, and it's not reported because they don't keep the PII.
For recreational.
Now, medical, that information is being entered in based on the medical cannabis patient's number, and it's being checked, yes, you are in with that, but that's not from the driver's license or the ID presented. That ID presented is only to verify that you are the person that's on that medical card. I hope that helped.
But, good question, good answer, but he just opened up the Pandora's box, right? Because there's also anti-looping. But wait a second, I just dumped my PII, how the hell am I supposed to know if this guy comes back or not? Well, figure it out. I don't know, we just make the rules, we don't know how to enforce them. We just know that if we catch you doing something wrong, you're gonna get those big fines that I was talking about. You know, or anonymized data. They'll ask for anonymized data so that they can track something. You know, gender, zip code, male, female. But they don't tell you how, like, there's no software that dumps data and keeps anonymized fields. Well, there are some companies that are designing to that because they're trying to help the state accomplish the goals that they've written, but it's, you know, everything, and Connecticut folks, you should pay attention because I'm pretty sure that you're gonna have a PII data dump. Most of the Northeast, most of the, maybe ironically, maybe not coincidentally, most of the states that are near the Canadian border, where they have very strict PII data retention laws, they have PII purge settings in Massachusetts, New Jersey, soon to be New York, and I'm gonna make a large bet, if I could, that Connecticut's gonna have data purge settings also. And then they're gonna wanna go, oh, but you know, you have to keep these fields anonymized. Well, I can tell you, with the state of New Jersey, right before they opened up, they had 3 fields required anonymized, and Cureleaf called me and they were like, what are we gonna do? We can't, like, our vendor doesn't, they're not software developers. What are we gonna do with this? You know, do you guys have it? And I was like, well, we've got 2 out of those 3 fields anonymized, because we already did it for Illinois, we already did it for Massachusetts, we already did it for Nevada. But our 3rd anonymized field is different from what New Jersey's asking for. And the National Retail Director from Cureleaf was like, hold on. Yeah, CRC says that's the new regulation. This is how this stuff is getting spun up. For whatever reason. And hopefully we can get this figured out if we all work together.
Question.
Yes, please.
So is there just like, I mean, I would assume that instead of changing the laws, the movement's towards cloud, right? I mean, and I'm coming from outside the industry, so it might be a silly question, but,
So is there movement for,
I mean, it's like, I would assume that that would be the standard approach, is that everybody moves to the
It-
cloud.
well, in the states, they have data purge settings.
Uh-huh.
You would hope, because that's the only way it can be accomplished, you would hope that it's moving in that direction. I can't speak for state agencies, because this is the quandary that we're in.
Uh-huh.
And furthermore, as much as I would like to assist the states, I would love to assist the states, it's difficult as a vendor to help, because they don't want to talk to vendors for a number of reasons. And like in my state in Nevada, I've literally been helping the NCCB. That's why they have best of class regs, because they're working with an expert to go, hey, we don't know this stuff. Like, how do we write this language?
Yeah.
Okay, what are you trying to accomplish? Tell me what you're trying to accomplish, and I can write the language for you. I would love to do that for Illinois. I'd love to do that for Massachusetts. I've done it to some degree for New Jersey, but it's very difficult to have those relationships. The government affairs people, the groups that really have like strong lobbyists, like the retail organizations for the cannabis dispensaries, the GTIs, the Planet 13s, the Cresco Labs, the Verano Holdings, the Curaleafs, they're not motivated to do it, even though they're the ones that are gonna get fined, and they are self-regulating in many cases. They're not gonna go and petition the state for more regulations.
Right.
They're looking to deregulate. So if they're not motivated to do it, the states are uneducated. Trying to get everyone on the same page is very difficult. So to answer your question, you would hope so, but I would make an even larger bet that outside of the state of Nevada, there's not a state agency that even has an idea what I'm talking about with the cloud solution, or what you would be talking about with the cloud solution, and why would you need it? Because you need it in order to purge the data that you already wrote up as a law.
Right.
And that's where things come down to, like, whoever your local auditor is, and how they perceive the law, and how they're hardcore or not, and whether they, and frankly, in a lot of situations, it does come down to whether or not, and I'm gonna speak speculatively, but I think I'm onto something. The people that get fined are the ones that can afford it. You know, can a one-off shop afford a $100,000 fine? No, they probably can't even pay it. They just go out of business. Can a Cresco, can a Curaleaf, can a GTI, can they afford it? That's why they are more interested in self-regulating, because ultimately, compliance doesn't mean anything if you're letting an underage and you're being found to do so. What do I have here? If an ID is scanned and determined to be legitimate, neither the dispensary or the bartender is legally responsible for an underage sale. Again, this is the theme, this is the big takeaway. Okay, what does it mean determined to be legitimate? You just gave me regulations that has me scanning illegitimate IDs. Did I just scan it and it was determined to be legitimate based on your regulations? So am I responsible? Aren't I responsible? Well, all I know is there's a 19-year-old and there's a parent that's pissed, and he's showing up at the headquarters of one of these big MSOs, and you sold a bunch of drugs to my kid, and this is where we're at today, guys. That's about it. Key takeaways. Not all digital scanning is created equal. Hopefully we've learned that. Scanning using handhelds that I've observed in many Illinois dispensaries is out of compliance, and for two reasons. One is because they're allowing underage consumption, and two is because they're allowing PII data retention, which is specifically against state regulations and state laws. Number three, the state may not understand scanning technology, but it's important that we do, because an underage purchase, regardless of how it occurs, will be our responsibility and a very expensive oversight if found to occur. And finally, it's a very confusing legal landscape, and if you have any questions, please ask me, because I'll do my best to answer, we'll try to figure it out together.
I think we got a question right here.
Yes?
I have a question. On the last slide where it says, the bottom says that if you scan an ID that's not legitimate, and you didn't know about it, but it accepted it.
Yeah.
Not responsive.
Yeah.
So now, let's say that I'm a little guy or I'm a big guy.
Yeah.
And they wanna fine me 100,000.
Yeah.
For that. Can't I go to your company who stated that that's what they put it back my state and sue you for not having the capability of determining that? That way I don't have no words.
That's a good idea. That's a really good idea.
I'm just saying.
No, it's a brilliant idea. That's why there's no vendor that will sell you that technology without an indemnity clause.
Okay, so you have one.
Every vendor has one. Every vendor has one. And frankly, every vendor, shouldn't say every vendor, but this is the ironic part about my industry is we've spent however long, almost an hour, talking about an extremely highly regulated industry and an extremely highly regulated vertical in government issued IDs. Like, there's nothing more regulated. We're all going through real IDs, upgrading right now. You know, Homeland Security is getting more and more. Government issued IDs are a huge, highly regulated industry. And then we've got all these vendors that are regulated. And so I guarantee you there's vendors out there going, hey, scan these. I know for a fact that most vendors are out there going, you use our 2D barcode scanning and you're gonna catch fake IDs. Yeah. They might even say you're gonna catch all fake IDs. That would be a lie. That would be 100% lie. But it's happening. But before they sell you the software, you're gonna sign an indemnity clause. Now, what I would like to do, and what I am doing in the state of Nevada, is working with them for the language and say, if you do this, if you do this, if you do this, and you do this, and you do your due diligence based on these factors, and an underage kid gets in there and purchases, you will not be fined because you did everything in your power. It's not like we're ever going to eliminate. Governor Sisolak has a lofty goal saying that he wants no underage tourists to come in and buy at a legal dispensary who's underage. It's probably happened in the state of Nevada, but at least, damn it, they're doing their best. And I'm trying to work with the state of Nevada saying, if they're doing their best and they can prove they're doing their best, then whether they can afford it or not, don't fine them. Like, these are the organizations that are really trying to help. This is all about health and safety. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, we probably all are old enough to care about whether or not this product is being sold to minors. So we're all trying to do our best. We're all trying to do help. Don't make it about whether they can afford the $100,000 fine or not. Make it about whether they're doing their due diligence. I hope that answers your questions. Unfortunately, it's not a black and white. I think it's the main takeaway of this.
No, there's
this
so
whole
many
thing.
differences in IDs and scans, I understand.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Set of comments on privacy that I was wondering that maybe you could respond to. I think a lot of folks, when they go and they're purchasing cannabis from legal sources, have a predisposition that they're not a fan of having their ID card scanned, right?
Yeah.
And I think that kind of regulation feeds into the illicit market and will continue to feed into the illicit market where you can remain 100% anonymous by just texting someone there's no ID scan. So
That's one motive.
in a world where privacy is very important, especially when we don't have federal legalization or folks are going to be looking for security clearances for other jobs or drug tests or what have you, why is it that we actually have to scan ID and not just verify it by looking at it? And fake IDs obviously is one thing and protecting youth is another, but for those folks that are in that sort of position, what is your response to?
Sure. My response is that this is a very controversial issue, and I think that one thing, I mean, if you want a very honest, genuine response, I think in America, we have a tendency as we exist today to be like, I'm right, you're wrong. This is my position, and therefore, if you don't agree with me, then you're not right. The fact is, in my opinion, what we're talking about is a very complicated subject. It depends on, like, believe me, I don't want my data out there for anyone either. I don't. But net, is it, you know, is the trade-off because who's ever subjectively doing this is letting in fake IDs compared to best of class technology. So it depends on how hard do we want, you know, what is the trade-off? And we're just talking about underage purchase. I think, you know, in my opinion, the idea of having an extremely high level of confidence, whether we're serving minors, this already very controversial, brand new industry, you can make a pretty strong case that we're trying to do the right thing. Doesn't make it any less controversial though, because I can speak for Canada. Canada, like, they're much older than us from a legal standpoint. They've spent a lot of time saying, no. I have very few digital scanning systems in Canada. They invented the no PI. You can't even send a soliciting email to a Canadian dispensary without them going, don't do that again or else I'm reporting you to the government. So they have very, very stringent laws. By the same token, they're starting to feel the heat because as hard of a stance as you're taking, there's a parent that's really pissed that their kid was able to go into a dispensary, purchase a bunch of marijuana, have a big party with it, somebody was irresponsible, now there's a kid that's hurt or dead, or, you know, or even a more traumatic event than that. So it's very controversial. I can't say that there's a right answer. It depends on the stance. I can tell you, even from another aspect, I sell into the gaming industry also, and when we came back from COVID, there was, I don't know if it hit national news or not, I think it did to some degree, but there was a rash of very violent criminal activity that was going on downtown on Fremont Street, and it made its way throughout Las Vegas Boulevard, and there's not even IDing in Las Vegas, right? The reason is because it's very competitive. There's 40 other casinos that you can go to. To your point, you're not going to go to the one that scans or even IDs because you're like, I don't want. You're like, no, I don't want to. I'll go next door. But when all this rash of violence started happening, the VIP, the really high roller, who would have been offended by having their ID scanned, suddenly they changed position and they wanted to go to a place that had their ID evaluated because they felt more safe in the casino, knowing that the first group I sold to was Derek Stevens and Circa, and I went to, you know, see how their scanning system was going, and Derek was very specific about it. He was like, I want to do this at the D first. I want to keep this on the down low because I don't know if this is a good idea or not. So I want to set up some scanning, but I don't want you telling anybody about it. I want us to evaluate on our own. And what he found out was that there were people going up. They were seeing that there was ID scanning going on, and they were turning around and going to another casino. And what ended up happening is so many casinos on Fremont Street started doing ID scanning that all the criminal activity started pocketing towards the casinos that weren't doing digital ID analysis. So yes, PII is a huge thing, so is crime and violence, so is underage drug sales, for lack of a better phrase. Yes, sir.
Do any of the states that the dispensaries or other businesses that are using your system allow confiscation of authentication? That's not good. Do they allow the business to confiscate them?
So I think what you're asking is, if someone is using my best of class system, are any of those organizations securing the fake or false IDs?
Once it does not pass.
The answer is 100%. 100%. Just like the busiest bars. Yes, it is me. Give me my ID back. Sure, no problem. Just go get a Metro officer. We'll band it back to you together. Oh wait, oh I'm sorry. No, I mean it's my older brother's ID. I'm gonna I don't know what to tell you. You just try to pay us $100,000 fine, and they'll say that same parent is gonna come and when I was calling on the MSOs this week, they're putting up their headquarters secretively. They're incognito about where their headquarters are. And I was like, why the hell can't I figure out where your headquarters are? They're like, because we had to make it a secret because we're getting parents showing up at our headquarters going, you sold my daughter, she's 18 years old, you're responsible. They're doing their best. And it's not an easy choice because PII is a real thing. And we have a real solution for it. It's just that, the industry or the government or people in general this stuff seems intuitive, it's not. Obviously, I think that's another takeaway that we can come from out of today. It's not as simple just to go, oh, I scanned an ID, that makes it fake, that makes it real. No. And everything comes at a cost too. You can have we have a third-party service that says it pings off of the DMV databases. It says, did you issue Kenneth Petticord an ID? Does he live at this address? Yes, I did. But now you're talking about state API calls are not cheap. So that's probably more effective for test driving a Tesla that you're worried about being gone in 60 seconds than it would be about buying an eighth of an ounce of marijuana. Except for delivery. It's actually a very good product for delivery when you want to pre-qualify someone before you drive to their house and find out that they're not legally able to purchase. Is that it? Thanks guys, I really appreciate your time. Hopefully you learned something. Don't forget, 8:15. I'm gonna change my answer. If you come over there, I probably will have a beer with you. Thank you.